are you today, my friend?
Very good. Very good indeed.
Very good. Hey, so I was anxious to kind of talk to you today about something, and it relates down to the Joshua Live podcast number 349.
349 is going to go down in the annals of history.
It's so funny. So that if you go to Joshua Live, right, go to the iTunes, it's number 349. I think it's called Freedom, right? Unlimited Freedom is the title, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I had sent Gary an email that morning saying, hey, I kind of feel like there's something going on, and I have these urges to sort of just, and I literally said blow things up. I said, no violence, just like I need a change and I need something, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know if I have to act on these urges or make a difference or change something in my conditions, but there's an uneasiness, going on. And he doesn't respond for a couple of days, but that day we had the Joshua call, and I kind of felt like his opening to 349 was direct. I thought he was answering my email in his
Right.
opening, and then he sends me an email like a few days later saying, hey, I got busy, I'm sorry, I didn't see this till now. Tracy had already answered, right away. And I'm like, oh, I thought you did answer it, like in the Joshua. And even today, like I'm starting my day like reading this, and I'll read a little bit of a segment just because I think it is like wildly life-changing. And it's the segment that starts at around 19 minutes, right before Joshua starts taking questions in podcast number 349. And this is what really it really sort of gave me perspective. The 20-minute opening is I think the best opening I've ever heard. But this 1 minute segment right here is, and I wanted your thoughts on it. I wanted to kind of have some feedback on it. But what he says here is, what we're talking about is your mental ability to imagine that anything is possible without having to figure out how it's going to be possible. Because the universe and your inner self will guide you to the most freeing, abundant life that you can possibly imagine, even beyond your imagination. You can't figure it out from your limited perspective. And so when inspiration comes and you try to figure out these things, you will say to yourself, that little voice in your head, oh, I can't do that because of my circumstances. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I have people who rely on me. I have this job. I have this career. I have this house. I have these bills. And it limits me from doing these things that I'm inspired to do. Well, we say, you're thinking too much in advance. You're imagining that this is not going to work out. If you just take the simplest steps, the first tiny little things that you could do in that moment, more often, acting more and more on those little inspiration, those little ideas, it will lead you to the realization of freedom. But guess what? That's not how the system works. You must feel free first. You must know yourself as free. You must perceive yourself as free. You must realize that you are the creator of all this, and then let the inspiration come and have faith that it will lead you to everything you truly want. And I think for me, that just resonates, that like I have these ideas of what I want to do, and then I list 15 things of why I can't do it. I meditate and I have these ideas that come to me. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then 25 ideas come to me about why I can't do it. Right. And I'm thinking 3 months in advance, 4 months in advance. How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to take care of this? I got my kids' college. I got that. I got to take care of that. I got a new car I got to get for my kid who just started driving. I'm like, boom, I'm like, that to me was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm doing every day of my life.
Yeah. Hey, I've got to let the cat out. Like 2 seconds.
Oh yeah. Go do what you got to do.
Okay.
All right. I like it.
And just before that bit that you read, there's another bit where they say something like, if you're not happy with your job or your marriage or whatever it might be, your relationship, then you could do something drastic such as leave, but we're not talking about that. And they're saying that that would be freedom of sorts, but it's probably not the result that you're seeking. So
Right.
what they say is it's kind of the mental part of it, isn't it? That and then that quote. I've got the same thing somewhere. That episode really is just extraordinary.
It truly is, and I didn't even get into the question because to your point, Jeremy's question, because there's another after those 20 minutes, there's another 40 minutes of just insanely intuitive knowledge that is being shared.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me, that episode. And I transcribed the first 20 minutes just because and I've been reading it every morning. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I've been transcribing it too. This is about 16 and a half minutes in. They said, if you're perceiving yourself as limited, this is the bit that comes just before what you read, I think. If you're perceiving yourself as limited, then you'll get out of alignment and you'll dip into the consciousness of fear, and you'll receive urges to change the conditions and take drastic action to change your conditions, which you think, well, that must be freedom. And we say, well, that certainly is a form of freedom, but it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go, because essentially you are seeing yourself as trapped, and the universe must bring you more examples of how limited or trapped you really are. So that's the part that precedes it. Is like, well, you could do something drastic and change your circumstances, but don't do that, because it's not the freedom you're seeking. The universe will deliver something far more perfect for you. And it's about, there's a bit in there, I'll see if I can find it, about, and you probably read it, which is about it's the mental thing, right? So
yes.
Right, here we are. What we're talking about is your mental ability to imagine anything is possible without having to figure it out. So instead of saying, I'm not happy with my job, for example, and then thinking I should quit, they're saying, well, that's pretty drastic. It's fear-based, and all you're going to do is experience more fear, because that's your message. That's what you're attracting, as per the law of attraction. Yeah, that is the most extraordinary, powerful episode. And you and I were just talking with Jeremy on a different call, and he asked, what he said was a quick question, and it was about his art and creativity. And Joshua said the most extraordinary things. In fact, it ended up with Joshua kind of interviewing Jeremy for 20 or 30 minutes and asking questions, which I don't recall having seen that before or heard that before. And then Harold asked a really cool question, which was about, he's saying, I thought as I got older, I cared less about what people thought of me. And he was saying, I thought that was like maturity, age, wisdom, or whatever. And Joshua says, no, it's not really. For most people, that's actually about increasing fear. So older people tend to avoid situations where they will be exposed to what people might think of them, because they don't want the pain. So it actually is about fear and putting up barriers, rather than being more mature and wise and all that sort of thing. So it was the most extraordinary episode. And with Jeremy, there was a couple of things they said about his art, that he is an extraordinary channeling artist. So I've realized in recent times that artistic creativity is essentially a channeled thing, that people receive the inspiration from source or their inner self or whatever. And they also said that the love that he imparts into his work, imbues into his art, when somebody buys that art and puts it on their wall in their home, that love is being projected from the artwork into their home, which I thought was an extraordinary thing as well. So it was all in all the most amazing episode. There were other questions too. I think Margaret asked one about relationships, which was pretty deep as well.
I loved it. No question. I think that, to me, there's several episodes that are that personally connected with me, right? And that was definitely one of them. This idea that that we that the conversation, so if all conversation and all thought is inspired, right? Because I don't know what I'm going to say to you before I say it. Like I don't know, I don't even know what I'm about to say. It, like, I know in my mind we're talking. I know we have a theme, right? But I don't have a script in front of me, right? That I'm reading from. So theoretically, all conversation is inspired, right? By whatever we're communicating with. And the more we lean into the illusion, the more we lean into the narrative of past, the narrative of fear, the more we create, or the more we attract these inspired thoughts of more fear and pain. If it's that simple, if all we have to do is think about love, acceptance, prosperity, and we will attract more, right? Through our conversation, through our actions, through our feelings, right? If it's just changing the narrative in our head that changes the inspiration we receive, that changes how we feel, that changes how we act, it changes the conversation we have, it changes it changes what our priorities are, right? So instead of asking for approval or worthiness or love, you're now giving it, you're sharing it, you're exploring it through the giver side. So you said something to me last time we talked, where I had said, hey, my wife and I had got up in the morning and we said, we just want to have coffee, watch the sunrise, and be whatever, crypto millionaires. And you said, hey, no, I thought you were going to tell me that you and your wife were having coffee, watching the sunrise, saying, my new job is to make sure the sun rises so that everybody gets to enjoy this gift. And I honestly haven't been able to stop thinking about that. I actually journaled on what you had said. And I've been going to watch the sunrise every morning, doing just what you had suggested. And it was like the inspiration of how to understand why I was doing it, for my inner self, for my inner authenticity. The inspiration came through you. So while I was wrapping it in the illusion of, it's going to be great to be, billionaires, you don't have to do anything, and this is going to be awesome, right? You were like, well, wait a minute, why are you doing it? And I'm like, you're right. I was going there just because it's this incredible gift that we get every day. And we don't take the time to it's a gift given to you, and I'm not opening it. So you talk about being able to receive things.
Yeah.
And by the way, I hired my wife. She's in charge of sunsets.
That's good. That's good division of labor. I'm very interested in the ancient stories of our indigenous people in New Zealand, the Maori people, and what in anthropology we used to call myths, the study of mythology. And I particularly like, and I'm sure I've told you this before, the creation myth, the Maori creation myth of Rangi and Papa, because to me it seems to parallel what Joshua said about when Source decided to explore or to create the physical so that things could be experienced and not available in the non-physical, such as fear and lack and so on, unworthiness and so on. And it also, those two concepts, the Maori creation myth and the Joshua version of events, are very similar to the Big Bang, and that correlation has always interested me. But another one of my favorite stories is about a character called Maui. And Maui is a name that appears in Polynesian mythology, as in the name of the island in Hawaii, for example, Maui, a beautiful island. And he's kind of a trickster character in mythology. So there are archetypes in mythology, and Maui's a bit of a trickster, but he's really the kind of person that thinks, well, just because it's this way, does it always have to be this way? So one of the things Maui did was he decided the days were too short. So he got his brothers, enlisted their help, and they set a trap for the sun in the morning, and they threw these flax ropes over the sun and managed to slow it down and made the days longer. So there you go. I probably got the idea from Maui that you guys are in charge of bringing the sun up for everybody else, because you're not the first person to do it. Maui got there before you. But apart from that, as far as I know, you're the only other person doing it.
Well, it's funny, right? And so you read Joseph Campbell, right? He's got those books on, he ties mythology, all the myths throughout time, and connects them all. So all these ancient myths, right, which to your point, there's some truth, right? There's some How do you have people that, we're talking tens of thousands of years ago, start to with ideas that are connected across continents, and there was no way for them to communicate?
Yeah, there are universal human themes in what we call myths. Myths, we use myth as a word to describe something we think is not true, like a fiction, that clearly without foundation. So it's an unfortunate word. So if we could find a better word for ancient stories or ancient truths, whatever, than myths. But in the meantime, mythology and myths is our working category, a working title. But yeah, that's one of the things I studied in anthropology, was the universality of human themes. And in fact, there was a whole theme of unity and diversity, that diverse cultures have so many universal themes, including in mythology and in religious or spiritual beliefs as well.
Yeah, no, it's this week has been wildly interesting, because I have fallen back into this idea of the illusion, right? Into some fear and into some limiting beliefs, right? Letting outside circumstances sort of push me or pull me in a direction, knowing it was knowing it was the illusion, knowing that there's another way.
Did you know that it was coming out of fear rather than inspiration, perhaps, or out of effort and struggle rather than inspiration?
I felt it, and the I think the idea for me was, okay, how do I flip it, right? And as you say, reframe it, right? How do I reframe this for my highest good? How do I reframe this for my highest good? Which is, as Joshua said, almost a shortcut, right to a manifestation event. So if it's not really true, which I do know, feeling it and believing it is that next step, right? I know that anything is possible. So, like, for example, my kid, to get an A in the course, she needed to get 101 on the test. Dad, there's no way I'm going to get 101 in this math course. And I said, listen, I don't care what your grade is, but let's have fun as a game. Why are you telling me that there's no chance to do something? Because you just said it out loud. So that means it must be achievable if you said it. It's not. I said, and my youngest daughter lives in the land of fear, of what ifs. And it's literally a cascade of all the terrible things that could possibly happen. And this is what she's going through. And I don't try to change it. I listen. And if she asks, I give her an alternate, right, scenario. So I said, hey, good luck, have fun today. Good luck on your finals. And she gets in the car and she goes, guess what? You got 101 on the test. Yeah. How'd you know? I said, because you said it in motion. You said it couldn't be done. Well, it is. I said, but you told me it couldn't. For a week, you told me it couldn't be done. But you did it. So help me. How did you get there? Well, I said, you said it. You really, really did want it. You must have believed in yourself, to get there, and you got an A in the course. So something you told me, based upon outside circumstances, based upon what the world was telling you, was impossible, yet it occurred. Why not live life? Why not live life that way? It was that interaction that helped me get past sort of what I was feeling.
Right.
But
right.
It's interesting, right? I mean, it's a small note, but it's like, how do we live that way every day? No matter what's thrown at us.
Practice, intention, appreciation, that sort of thing. Yeah. But I mean, that's why we do the daily homework kind of a thing, the daily spiritual practice, if you like, isn't it? Because we want to, because they say that out of that work we do, that the intention and the appreciation are the most powerful parts of it. Like, what is your intention for the day? Your general intention, right? Not a specific thing, but a general intention for the day.
So, and that's a great lead into this, still keeping the theme of this Joshua Live podcast 349. How do you look not too far in advance and create the negative what ifs?
Oh, yeah, so that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because, you and I have done all the goal setting and all the planning and all that corporate stuff. And, realistically, if you look at any year of your life where you set goals and thought about what the year ahead would bring, my experience has been, and increasingly really, especially in a COVID world, that whatever you plan for on the 1st of January, when you get to the 31st of December, it turned out completely different, and stuff happened that you would never have expected. And we had like a big earthquake 10 years ago, and that was a bit of a game changer. And we were living overseas, and then COVID came along, and COVID keeps kind of morphing, which is very interesting too. And that I early on took a bit of a Joshua approach to COVID, which was, okay, we think we know this today about the best way for a country to deal with it, or a state or whatever, and we think we know this particular thing, but we don't have all the information, and I suspect that things will unfold differently. And then things do unfold differently, and you get social resistance, which is happening a little bit in New Zealand, where people are anti-mask wearing, anti-lockdown, and anti-mandate. The mandates are that, for example, if you want to sit inside a restaurant or a cafe, you have to have the vaccine pass. And if not, the government says, they can't let you in. You can do takeout, but that's it. So there are people protesting about that. And it's like, okay, we haven't had that lack of cohesion in our society before, but that could be a good thing in a way, because a bunch of people who are kind of annoyed and ornery about stuff are finding a voice to express it. It may be through the vehicle of a COVID protest, but they seem to be pissed off about other things as well, somewhat inarticulately perhaps, but it's a genuine thing. But also with COVID, it tracks along, and then suddenly we get Delta, which is serious and more infectious, and we think, okay, we're sort of dealing with Delta, and next thing we get Omicron and that's maybe not quite as serious, but still serious, but it's super infectious. And like in certain countries, the numbers are just exploding. Like Britain, I think, just yesterday recorded its highest ever daily infections because of this. So my point is not to have an opinion about any of it, because I'm generally wanting to avoid that, but just I'm fascinated by how the year has turned out. Even once we knew about COVID, the way it's tracked this year is not how anybody would necessarily have predicted. And they even said at one stage, well, maybe it's going to be a less serious variant. It'll become the dominant variant, and all the others will disappear, and then the thing will become not a lot worse than the common cold. I don't think that's actually happening at all. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but it was an interesting thought as well. But anyway, ignoring COVID and all that stuff, because I know it winds up a lot of people, but just have an open mind, because we don't really know all the facts about it. You can guarantee that whatever you think about on the 1st of January for your plan for the year, get to 31st of December, it's going to be very different. And so how to take the next step and not think of the future steps was your question before I went on that small diversion. So COVID does that to you. So, so that's the thing really, because Joshua says, take the first step, because you can become a vibrational match to that step. But don't start thinking about step 2, 3, 4, and 5 down the track once you've done that, because you're not a vibrational match to those steps. And so that's the logic or the rationale behind it. And so your question is, well, how do I do that without thinking about the future steps? And I suppose it's that big shift in thinking that you might say, I have a goal, and then as things change, I adapt my goal. And I thought it was going to shape up this way. It's a little bit different, so we're going to change our plans a little bit. So whether you call that business planning, or whether you call it, I acted on the first inspiration and then the second one came and I acted on that, it's kind of the same process, but you're already doing it because you change your plans on the fly, because you have to, because everything changes all the time. So to some extent, the logical steps in the sequence, they may exist, but half the time they're an illusion. Doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, and that's even the bigger picture, which you talked about, like goal setting and planning, right? Which we've all been taught to do, right? And I haven't done it's funny, I haven't done that the last 2 years, and everything seems to be turning out okay. The only thing I don't have is something to measure my progress or expansion, however you want to refer to it, on a monthly basis, and as a year roundup, right? So, for COVID, political, war, whatever is a global situation, right? That occurs, a global conflict, right? A global manifestation. I think the way I see it now, and it's almost like a test to see who's expanding past letting outside circumstances dictate their life. And we've had all these things go on, right? You said these earthquakes, right? These financial meltdowns. We've had everything happen to us that you could possibly imagine over the last 100 years. This is not the first time we've had a medical pandemic, right? We did that in the 20s, right? 100 years later, we do it again. However serious they are or aren't, I'm not minimizing anything, but it is interesting. Like, for example, Jen, who's in a situation, like she said today on a call, where there's 17 people in her small little company that have the new variant of COVID.
Yeah, yeah. And
I don't.
she's been performing on stage, right? So the show stopped because too many
Right.
people in the crew have got it. Yeah.
And her, one of her big manifestation events has been COVID. Like, she's worried about it, which I understand why. I'm not, negating it, but it's been on her mind. It's been on her focus. I haven't thought about it. And not that I'm minimizing it in any way. I'm not. It's just not part of my life on any level. Like, if I have to wear a mask someplace or I have to get vaccinated, I would do okay. If I had to do any of that, I would have no problem doing it. Right. I'm not against any of it. It's just not in my life at all. And I work for a doctor. When Jen sent me her I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how could I be in the medical industry and not, literally, I never talk about it, never hear about it. Never, if I'm asked to do, I, of course, follow whatever rules out there, right? I'm not looking to be anti this or a breaker of that or spreading anything. But my manifestation event has been based upon, and we talked about it today, and this is where it goes back thinking ahead, is what is my primary fear? What is my life theme? Right. And how do I get to start experiencing that without getting trapped in COVID, in war, in political, in Trump, in Biden, in, I don't even know, Florida, Texas versus the entire United States. Right? I don't even know how to say it, but I don't listen. I can't tell you that since Joshua, especially the last few months, and you and I have talked now for about 6 months, like I went from up here to it gone. And it's not involved in any aspect of my life. It's so interesting to me to see this and go, my focus right now is how to not fall into the fear of the what ifs 3 or 4 months from now when it pertains to my worthiness, financial prosperity, and or value. Right? That has been mine. Jen has got other ones, right? So she's all in COVID. I'm all about, abundance and prosperity. That's where my sort of, limiting beliefs and manifestation events continue to pop up. And I think for me, while she's worried about, how many people are going to get COVID, I'm worried about, am I growing in my value and in my worth? Am I becoming that person that I know I can be, and I know I want to be? And that includes financial prosperity, worthiness, intelligence, right? And all those different things. To me, seeing all that is the most interesting thing, that we're all playing out these individual manifestation units. There's one game board right out there, and we're all playing different pieces on it. What do you think about that?
So there's a couple of big themes you mentioned in there. One was about the biggest fear and the biggest theme. And before that, there was the measurement of progress as well, which comes from that whole kind of year end, where do we get to round up, stock take, whatever you want to call it, which is a business concept really. But so, that's just a thought that's something one should do at the end of the year. You could choose not to do it as well. But we did touch on that in that call we had earlier today, where somebody had asked in a previous session about, I'm not feeling any progress, I'm not seeing any progress. And so I asked, well, what sort of progress was that person expecting? And is she still fearful and still has issues, with other people? And she was kind of hoping that would all be resolved. But So I guess, well, I know that I'm a very different person from when I started doing the boot camps, the Joshua boot camps, and then the Ascension experience, and started absorbing that material. So I'm a very different person in a number of ways. So you could call it progress, and you could decide you want to measure it. I hadn't really thought about measuring it, but above all else, I'm much happier, and fewer things bug me. And any issues I had with any people in my life, are largely resolved. So just about all of them are resolved, very well resolved as well. And also I've been making contact with people, some of whom I haven't spoken to for over 40 years, rediscovering old friends, and, being astounded at the great warmth that has been sitting there, unbeknown to me, for 40 odd years or more. So the whole thing about progress and measuring, well, that's just a thought, really. But one of the things you and I have talked about is rediscovering the exuberant joy of youth, that unbounded, unfiltered, unfettered. And you see it probably most extreme. I was watching two little kids, like preschool kids, at the airport one day, and they didn't know each other, but their parents started talking about something. And these little kids, there was no barriers. Next thing you know, they're playing like they've known each other forever. And I thought, well, there's no barriers. There's no worry about what people think. And there's no reason why you can't meet an adult, and if you get on, you could actually have that same instant connection, apart from the fact that fear and what will people think and all that. You see what I'm saying is that's a very free expression of the exuberance and joy and unfiltered behavior of youth. But and so we know that as you get older, you become more fearful, you care more of what people think, you might choose to entrap yourself financially and work and mortgages and car payments and all that, sort of thing. So fear grows, and so the exuberance of youth vanishes at that point. So yeah, the whole progress measurement thing, like if you can recapture some of that exuberance and joy of youth along the way and dump some of those fears and get out of your mind traps, our mind traps, like, to me, that's the sort of progress I'm interested in. I don't really measure in the net worth and goal setting sense that I used to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, the goal setting. I think that's where this, coming, I think, for me, coming to the end of this year, is I'm looking at it in a very different way. And I think the way I'm looking at it is how do I, connect to my authentic self, my inner self? How do I, open myself up to that inspiration, and take advantage of it? I think those things are much more at the forefront of my mind versus trying to, as we've all done in year past, goal set of what we are. But maybe I am goal setting just by saying that, and maybe that's just phase two. I feel wholeheartedly that I need to. I'm living in old page. I'm living in an old website, and I haven't hit the refresh button. Everything's cached, and I haven't hit the refresh button, and I'm not on the new page yet. I kind of feel like I'm living in this cached old page of the illusion. And it's like, I know what I'm thinking isn't right. I know there's a better view, but I'm still looking at the old view, and I'm like, this is wrong.
December 31st, January 1st is not necessarily a useful paradigm for you. And there are other times, markers during the year, that might be more interesting for us to explore. Like, I get equinox and solstice confused, so excuse me if I do it the wrong way around, but I think the equinox is like the longest and the shortest day, right? Which, is coming up shortly for you guys for the shortest day, and for us for the longest day, because we're in the southern hemisphere. And then I think that's the equinox. And then I think I meant to know this because I'm meant to be something of an astronomer. But
I was going to
say, I know the concept. I just forget the labels. And then I think the solstice is the midpoint. So if those days are around 21-22 June and 21-22 December, which is the longest and shortest days, depending on where you live in the above or below the equator. Not there's top and bottom and up and down in space. But anyway, but the midpoint between those, so June, July, August, September, so around 21 September, and then I guess March, I think those are the solstice, which is where, the swing around starts to happen. So like those have been acknowledged and honored by the ancients forever, and in a way have more resonance for me these days than 31 December, 1st of January, which is a somewhat arbitrary calendar sort of a thing. I guess it has some meaning as well. But anyway, I was just saying to you that in business, we tend to look at those things. That's a time that it might be the end of the tax year in some places as well. So it has that kind of thing going for it, but what does it all mean and what does it matter? And why do we need to do self-reflection on the 31st and the 1st, Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but it's just a thought really. And it's where business planning has kind of moved into personal lives as well, where we try and use that sort of planning paradigm around how we run our lives and measure stuff.
Yeah, and I've always enjoyed, goal setting. It's not, and I think it, once you leave school, once you leave, college, and the 31st and the 1st become important dates, all up until your early 20s, to your point, there are more important dates out there, right? It's funny that, when you talk about when you start losing your joy, or when you start losing your pure enthusiasm for, for the world, it's the day that you also start measuring yourself on those 2 days, the 31st and the 1st, versus all the way up till that point, you're measuring at the end of a semester, which, to be honest, which is kind of crazy, most of the time is on one of the solstice, right? I mean, it's, my daughter's college just ended. It's the 16th. It's 5 days before the 21st, which is, for us, the shortest day of the year, right? The winter solstice. But if I was to go back and remeasure my life based upon those points, there's no question I'd be happier. I think having 4 or 5 touch points that were based upon, right, the seasons. Think about that. So even when you're in winter, you're inside, you're skiing, you're doing different sports, different activities. What are you doing, right? No matter what we're doing, we have a different agenda. Then during summer, we're at the beach, we're sailing, right? Different activities. In fall, we may be doing different sports, doing different things, right? So even when we were younger, we broke it up, and with the way our mind worked and the way our desires worked, we're so much different than we are as adults. As adults, to your point, it's the 1st through the 31st. It's our fiscal. In some cases, some people do it in June, right? But we're talking about it in July now, in January now. But everything is based upon this year-long journey that at the end of it, we're like, what happened? You may have a monetary desire, right, to meet a certain, but when you're younger, you're like, hey, I'm going to go skiing. I'm going to get a ski house with my friends.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to get a summer house with my friends. Right. I'm going to go to the races in August up in Saratoga in New York, where it's like Travelers, which is this amazing horse racing stuff, which is just unbelievable little town and fantastic time. And then we have Thanksgiving. It's so much fun, right? And versus as an adult, January 1, quarter 1, what are your earnings quarter 1? What are your earnings quarter 2? Right? Well, it's unbelievable to me. Everything we do, the minute we step into adulthood, is to rip away any type of enjoyment. And instead of giving us this idea that there's going to be fun ahead and there's something to look forward to, well, they give you 2 weeks vacation for 50 weeks of working, right? I'm going to look forward. But when you're younger, every quarter, even if you're working all the time, I'm going to get a ski house on the weekend. It's like there are opportunities to embrace life for what it's offering. When as you get older, and then you think money is going to give you those offerings, right? It's going to create those offerings for you so you can go back to be a kid. And then you go and you get a ski chalet and you go to summer house. I did all these things. And you're like, okay, it's not as fun. because the
Yeah.
whole, right? Because you're trying to fit a new idea into an old concept. And like I am right now on this sort of cached screen I'm looking at, it's just not fitting. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. And you know, I just had a conversation with an old high school friend that we had reached out where our birthdays were around the same time. And I had said, you know, to her, you know, the idea is just to find the joy we did when we were kids. Like if you can find that, you can create anything you want in
Yeah.
this world.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, I started talking about that some time ago, and I think it's a really valuable theme, and it keeps popping up everywhere now. Like a guy I know who has a business coaching business. I've known him for a long, long time. He's a very clever guy. He's a very good guy. And he's written his own version without the wisdom of Joshua on joy, what joy is all about. And it's not necessarily how I would take it, but the interesting thing was he was talking about the joy of youth, and it's like the theme comes up everywhere. I was also thinking when you mentioned about 2 weeks vacation that until fairly recently in New Zealand, everybody had by law 3 weeks annual vacation. And in addition to that, there are 11 public holiday days, right, which may be on a Monday to give a 3-day weekend or whatever they are. But our Labour governments, which is our left-wing government, they tend to, you know, be affiliated with trade unions and supposedly represent the working person, although they're kind of champagne socialists these days, well-to-do, highly educated, never did a proper job, sort of half of them, if you know what I mean. So it's a little ironic. But anyway, I guess their ancestors, you know, might have or might not have been working people. But anyway, so they put in place 4 weeks annual vacation, and they're adding another day. So there'll be 12 days of, so basically you've got, you know, 32 days of annual leave, 32 working days, you know, so 4 weeks of annual vacation, and then another 12 days spread around throughout the year. So there's quite a lot of time off. But the thing is, the thought behind that is that work is punishment or imprisonment or unpleasant at the very least, something you have to do. Nobody likes it, of course. So we're going to try and give you a better life and more freedom by giving you more weeks when you get paid for not having to go to work. So that's very much old paradigm though, isn't it? It's actually about lack and victimhood. It's actually not about finding a way to enjoy what you do, love what you do. It's kind of the opposite, which is based in fear and loathing, you might say. And it's not about finding things you can do to follow your inspirational life. So it's not about any of that kind of higher level approach to work. It's about work being entrapment, and unfortunately it's the human condition, and you're a poor working person, and we feel sorry for you, and we're going to give you more leave to further emphasize your victimhood and our ability to help you through it, or inability. So I just realized as you were talking about 2 weeks vacation that it's a step, and it may be nice that people have more holidays. I'm not begrudging that, but it is interesting to me that it suddenly struck me that it really is old paradigm thinking. I keep saying paradigm today. I don't know why. I had mixed feelings about the word paradigm ever since I first encountered it in 1976. But anyway, I think I'll stop saying paradigm if I can remember to.
You know, it's funny. So think about this. So if I'm going to go to, if I'm going to Cabo, right? Because that's a 45-minute flight from here from Arizona. Now I call it vacation. Think about the connotation of vacation. If I was doing this when I was 19, I'm taking a trip. I'm going to visit. I'm going to experience. I'm going to go get some sun. I'm going to go have some fun. Now it's like, I need to get away from life. So this idea from, to your point, to even enhance what you're saying even more, is that society has built up the idea that life isn't worth living. It's not worth, think about this. It's not worth living the 50 out of the 52 weeks a year. You work 50 out of 52 weeks so you can go live for 2 weeks on a great vacation someplace. People save up all year for that. That's insanity.
It is. It is. It's like the alternative is you could enjoy every moment of every day.
But yeah. And once again, up until I'll make it up an age of 21, right? Just because it's a subjective year, right? You graduate college. Up until that, every day is worthwhile. Every day is fun, right? Every day is the greatest day. Every day has potential. Up that, then it's like, well, how much you're earning this year? What's my bonus? What am I going to get? Year end bonus. Gotta wait for that year end bonus. When's your review? Right? Think about how our whole everything changes, and even for me, with whatever's going on right now, however I'm feeling, like it's like I'm trying to go back to understand that every day is beautiful, and it starts with that conversation. And I love the way you sort of you put me in the right direction when I said I was watching sunsets, joking that I wanted this to be my job, and you said, yeah, well, it should be. You should help raise it every morning so that you give, so that it's a gift for the world. And now I'm going to that, and I'm laughing, and I'm talking to the sunrise, having a great time going, and I'm videoing it, and I'm putting music to it, and I'm like, this is fun. I'm sending it to my kids, and my kids are joking now, hey dad, don't be late for work. I'm like, oh, I'm going now. I'll see you. My wife this way, I got up a few minutes late. My wife's like, damn it, you're late for work again. And I said, I'm going. Right. And that's fun. Like I'm still getting up, doing an effort, getting up early, right? Doing this stuff, putting an effort in, that people say, oh, why would you get up that early? Right. If it was work, if it really was work, why would you do that?
Yeah. So getting up early, as long as you had some sleep, getting up early can be an amazing thing. And Jessica pointed out to me one day that dawn and dusk are two extremely powerful times. They're just those moments in time where, the spacious present, or whatever you want to call it, that you can kind of get through, to other feelings. And I'll just say it's a powerful time. So dawn and dusk are really, really important. And there is just something magical and powerful and special when you're there for dawn, like the first light and when the birds start singing, before the sunrise, and then the sunrise as well.
Yeah, I just feel at this point that there's some sort of, I've been feeling that I'm at some sort of tipping point. And that 349 episode really helped me. Like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, don't blow things up.
No, I think it's incredible. It's the most extraordinary. It is potentially in a series of extraordinary episodes, that could be the one. 350 is going to be interesting, because I think that's the one where Joshua gave that extraordinary download to Jackie Seiden, who does the Evolution podcast. Did you hear that?
When was that one?
Was
that last
maybe
week?
like a week ago or something? It hasn't been published yet.
Maybe I missed that one. I was going to say, I may have missed that one. I thought, yeah, I have to look. But I do. I mean, I try to listen.
So
like those.
Yeah,
those are important.
I think it's going to be episode 350, and I'll just have a look. I don't think it's out yet, but Gary is in Aruba right now. Yeah, it's not there yet, but it will be there shortly, I would say. Be there within a few days. So in 350, you have to listen to it. Joshua gave the most extraordinary download to Jackie Seiden, and so
what was the theme?
I'll tell you in a second.
Of the download?
I'll tell you in a second. It's pretty big, and it's pretty out there for a lot of people. Something she said, which I didn't quite catch at the time, but she told me later, and then I understood, was she said, when she asked a question, she said, and don't filter it, Gary. Like, don't filter it, because it turns out that Joshua might say something to Gary, and Gary might think that might be a bit far out for people, because it's not just
Gary has noted that, right? I think he's noted that a few times. He's like, Joshua, they're not ready for this.
Well, I asked a question about maybe 2 months back, and Joshua said, well, that's an interesting question, because we were discussing that very topic with Gary this morning in his meditation, and he decided that it was a step too far for people. So we decided not to go there. So anyway, but since you've raised the topic, they said, we're going to answer the question. So Jackie basically said, because Jackie channels, right? So like her channeling at the beginning of her podcast, the Evolution Pod Club, where she just goes for it, and it's powerful, and it's high energy, and it's intense, it's wonderful stuff. So she said that if you call that her normal channeling voice, she said she has another voice, and it feels like her ear is underwater, And so she feels the sensation that's happening, and she didn't know what it was. And so basically Joshua said, because Jackie, she's channeling, and she's an actress and a singer and so on, right? So she's got that phenomenal ability to relate to large numbers of people, which I guess is one of the things being a successful singer or actor, right? Is that more than someone like me, for example, she can reach a lot of people, and the masses can resonate with someone like her because she's able to reach so many vibrational levels, whatever, I don't know the reason, but she can. She has that talent, right? And she has a lot of it. So they basically said, this is all my interpretation at last, but they basically said that you are destined for something huge. You are, in my words, not theirs, you're going to take the world by storm. And it was, almost to the point of Oprah and the Dalai Lama will be ringing you up for advice.
I did. I remember. Yeah, you're right. I did. Now I recall everything. Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah. So I said to Jackie the other day when we were Zooming with her about something else, I said, I had this picture, Jackie, that you're on the phone to the Dalai Lama and the other line starts blinking, and you say, "Can you please hold, Oprah? I'm just on the phone to the Dalai Lama."
I love it. That's great.
Yeah. Anyway,
I enjoy Jackie's podcast. I've been listening to them, more.
So that one was huge, and it was they've never heard them make comments or talk about someone's future in that way. They never have, and I think it's partly because she is extraordinary, but also because she did say to Gary, "Don't filter it."
Yeah, that it's that they very much have stayed away from forecasting the future or giving us insight, right? That's and I think actually at one point they've actually said, we're not going to do that. We're never going to tell you that.
Well, that's true. That is true. Yeah, it's because I did wonder with Jackie, because I've been doing a bit of work with her on her online presence and persona and all that stuff, and I did wonder, it's like, she's successful as an actress and as a singer on Broadway and TV and movies and so on. And I thought, you may keep doing that year after year after year, but will you be doing it when you're 50 and 60 and 70? And maybe you will, maybe you won't, but acting roles aren't necessarily as abundant in those later age categories, perhaps, or certainly for women. That's a perception I have. I don't know how true it is, but I've read stuff about that. So I did wonder, I wonder if the work you're doing with channeling in your pod club, your Evolution Pod Club, I didn't say this to her yet, but I don't need to now really, because Joshua said it already. I did wonder whether that may become her thing in the future. And
I think she's a natural. Yeah, she's great at it. She's a natural, and there's no question that she's meant for that. I think that.
Yeah, you can see her striding the stage and all that stuff.
Yeah. There's no and to your point, I mean, no matter what you think, it's like an NFL football team. It's 32 United States NFL football teams, right? There's 45 players per team. Like, that's it. Like, my friend was a professional baseball player, and he said there were 800 professional baseball players in the world that play United States baseball, right? So no matter what, at some point, at some age, you age out, right? So if there are, what are there, 50 movies coming out, a year now. I mean, right? I don't know how many. It's not tens of thousands anymore, right? So you only got how many actresses or actors that can do those movies. At some point, right? There's only a few people left. So what are you going to do next?
Yeah. I mean, she is acting. She's just finished that TV series, and
she's doing she's amazing. I mean, I love watching her and Jen. I think they're both like off the charts, like funny and good. So I got a friend that's going to be in New York in January, and I was just going to reach out to Jen, and she told me that their show is. I'm like, "What's your show?" I want to get them all tickets because I want my friends to go see her do this. And she's like, "We just closed down." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Because of COVID, because the cast got Omicron,
yeah. Which is like, oh my goodness.
So we're back to COVID again, but we don't want to go there. We'll stay away from COVID and paradigms for we're probably about done for today anyway. Have you got any last deep thought bombs you want to drop on the world?
I have a few things that are occurring that I've started to journal about, and I'm going to share. I'm letting it sort of in real time applying Joshua's teachings, seeing how it affects what happens next.
Right.
So there are some big things going on, some big events happening. So instead of dropping the grenade, I am saying, okay, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to trust the process. I'm not going to think too far in advance.
I'm tempted to rephrase what you said slightly, where you said applying Joshua's teachings, because Joshua says, well, you don't really need us. You're only needing us to the point where you can listen to your own inner voice, your own inner wisdom, your own inner self. And when you are listening, when you're able to open that channel and hear your inner wisdom, I'll call it, then you don't need us anymore, which I like for a number of reasons, including the fact that it's not some kind of a sect, you know, with exclusive membership and levels and development. And, you know, like, it's not like it's a massive money-making sect or anything even remotely resembling that. It's quite the opposite. It's like, you only need us until you can hear your inner voice. And a number of people have kind of got to that point and drop in occasionally or not at all. So my point is, it's not applying Joshua's teachings to your life. Ultimately it's applying your own inner wisdom and living accordingly, which is living. It answers our question from several weeks ago, which was, what is being authentic? And that's it, right? It's actually living a life in tune with your inner self.
I love it.
That's a better place to finish than the P word or the C word that I was talking about before, right?
It is. I'm writing down when I do fall back into the illusion, I get that pull back in. I'm saying, hey, these are some thoughts. I know these are the illusion. I know they're the illusion. I know they're the cached images, right? So what am I doing to refresh the page to see the new images? That's sort of what I want to document that, so that people understand this is how you reach within yourself to find that inspiration, to hear that inner voice.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good topic for another day, is how do you start to hear the inner voice? Because that's starting to happen for me a lot more than ever before. And also, I think when it was happening in the past, I had no idea what it was, and I just counted it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No,
turn it off.
That. Yeah, I don't need that. Yeah. So on that deep note,
thanks, Rob. Thanks for taking the time. We've been a lot of Joshua talk today.
Yeah, with that 90-minute session, whatever it was before that coaching.
That was brilliant. Honestly, the conversation was insane how far we took that.
Yeah, it was. It was an extraordinary conversation.
I would drop, if you post this, I would drop that call, the link to that call in this. So if anybody wants to see the conversation on forgiveness, well, it's a really great.
The forgiveness thing is interesting. Yeah, because people think of traditional forgiveness of self and others, but it appears it's more about, we think we may have moved on past something, but if there's still emotional pain trapped in the body, then if you're feeling pain or discomfort in your body, it's because there's some emotional pain trapped there. And it's about, how does one dissolve that, or raise the vibration and heal the emotional pain, or eliminate it or reduce it in the body. So it's actually using that kind of, and I'm interested because Joshua's never gone there before about that emotional pain. I know other spiritual sort of people talk about all that stuff trapped in the body. It'd been brought up once or twice when people asked a question, but now it seems to be a big thing. So maybe we can talk about that next time.
Well, it's also too, and you brought up just a great leveler, right? That we're all thinking about forgiveness based upon a Christian or Judeo definition of that, right? That we may have surpassed, right? That may not be applicable anymore, but that's how we're all thinking about it. And in this concept, it just doesn't have merit. Not that right. We're just not talking apples to apples anymore.
Yeah. I think it's closer to, Jessica has introduced that idea from Carlos Castaneda of recapitulation, which is another thing we can talk about next time.
I would love to
make a note. We'll talk about recapitulation, trapped emotion, pain, or forgiveness. Yeah.
Well, especially with the recapitulation of your energy and where you're leaving. I mean, that to me is like, wow.
It's an energy gaining process. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Well, listen, like I said, we could you and I could talk all day. This is great. I
Okay,
love
should we do
chatting
that?
with
Let's
you.
do that. I got all day. No,
Yeah, I really.
it's 11:20 a.m. here, and I haven't had breakfast.
I tell you, you're on a slingshot to your Friday. You're ready to go now.
That's right. It was nearly Friday lunchtime here. I know it's what, Thursday evening there now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to a cocktail hour with my wife and a couple of friends in 2 hours, and I got to get this. I'm just finished this business plan out for this company I'm doing
Okay.
stuff. I'm getting that out the door, and
We had
I
a
like
Zoom,
it.
we had a Zoom Christmas party the other day. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
Pretty
That
corny.
is, see, well, that's our childhood exuberance. I love it.
Yeah. The silly
love
hats
that.
thing was my idea. I came up with a silly mask, but still, yeah.
Good for you. Know what? I couldn't
It
agree
was
more.
it's the astronomy company, a telescope company, right? And so most of the people are like got that scientific astronomy bent. So that was kind of funny.
I think that I used it this year. That Halloween is my sort of gateway to refeel and reconnect with my inner self. So how do you become that kid again? And
Yeah.
by wearing that mask that's the step in the right direction.
Yeah, the dog agrees. The dog gets it right.
Yeah,
the dog's
my
got
dog's
the energy
excited.
right. The dog's picked up on the energy.
Amazon's being delivered.
Okay. All right. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.